President Trump has made economic success a focal point of his 2020 re-election campaign. But is that a winning strategy? A new CBS News poll shows 38% of Americans are optimistic about the economy, but that's only slightly more than those who are pessimistic about it. The poll also found concerns about the president's handling of trade issues. CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto joins me now on set. Anthony, thank you so much for being with us. So these numbers are interesting. 56% of Americans rate the economy as good, but at the same time, 54% feel that things are generally going badly in the country. Those numbers used to move in tandem with each other, right? What is motivating this split now that we're seeing?
It might be the most important split to watch going into 2020, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, look, behind it is partisanship. I mean, we're going to get to a point in lane where we're just going to come on, you introduce me,
That's
I say partisanship, and we're done. Good night, folks.
Right.
We're out.
Right.
But look, it is partisanship in this sense, that we find Republicans are more likely to say that the economy is doing well than Democrats are. Some of that is true across income levels. Republicans are also more likely to say that they're doing better than they were 2 years ago before President Trump took office, and Democrats less likely to say that. So what you do see here is people used to, or we think the model used to be, that they would evaluate their finances, evaluate the economy, and then judge the party in power, even retrospectively. But more and more there's a component of it now where people decide what team they're on, and then they kind of cherry pick the data in the economy that makes the case for their side, or at least for the way that they want things to be. And so that split between direction of the country and the economy is part of that.
So I think you basically answered the next question. But when it comes to the future of the economy, 38% of those polled said they feel optimistic. 35% say they feel pessimistic. So is this another case where the rhetoric, and depending on which side of the aisle one is sitting on, that's what determines how people actually feel about the economy?
Well, part of it is who you're listening to. Now, Republicans feel the president describes the economy accurately. But then there's 42% I think, who said that they think the media makes the economy sound worse than it is. And so you've got this back and forth here of, well, whose story are you going to listen to, especially when it comes to something like the economy, where there's all these different components of it, right? Now, on those components, Elaine, you can look at the job market, and people are really optimistic about that. That's underpinning a lot of the optimism you mentioned. But then there are things like trade policy, where they're a little more pessimistic about what that might do. And then there's other things like international affairs, which they look at and they see some uncertainty. So they're a little more pessimistic about that. So you take it piece by piece. A lot of it's good, but some of it, they see some storm clouds.
So speaking of geopolitics here, earlier in the show, we mentioned some developments in U.S. trade negotiations with China. How big of an issue is this really, this trade war for voters?
One of the things we noticed was that 58% of people said they thought the impact of any potential new tariffs on China would mean that the American consumer would pay more. And so that's part of it. Look, that's going to come back to their literal bottom line. It's going to come back to their kitchen table. And that's one of the reasons why they see some pessimism in what might happen with trade. Having said that, on trade policy, for those who do support the president's policies, there's this mixture we found, the split really, between people who believe it'll work and people who hope it'll work, which I read in larger context as a lot of people have said in this poll and others, they would like something done. They're not necessarily sure this is going to work, but they want something done. So there's a little bit of uncertainty out of that.
Interesting. So as we mentioned, President Trump likes to tout the success of the economy in his re-election campaign. Do these results tell us anything about what his chances might be in 2020, or is it just too early to tell right now?
I think it's the way you see the campaign setting up. They'll start to craft messages in response to how people feel now. And I think it comes back to that split about direction of the country. We know that hews to partisanship, but we also know, look back at the midterms, where people said the economy was good, but those who said the economy was good and yet the direction of the country wasn't going well, they voted for Democrats, right? On the other hand, the president still gets majority approval for how he's handling the economy. So if that sort of resurfaces to be the #1 driver, then he's in a much stronger position. And I think that's the way you watch it going forward.
All right, really interesting stuff. Anthony Salvanto, always great to see you. Thank you, Anthony.